He didn't shout at me. He didn't shout at me. He didn't shout at me.
Ele não gritou comigo.
They haven't shouted lately. They haven't shouted lately. They haven't shouted lately.
Eles não gritaram ultimamente.
She didn't shout in anger. She didn't shout in anger. She didn't shout in anger.
Ela não gritou de raiva.
I didn't hear anyone shout. I didn't hear anyone shout. I didn't hear anyone shout.
Não ouvi ninguém gritar.
We haven't shouted in fear. We haven't shouted in fear. We haven't shouted in fear.
Não gritamos de medo.
He didn't shout with joy. He didn't shout with joy. He didn't shout with joy.
Ele não gritou de alegria.
She didn't shout in frustration. She didn't shout in frustration. She didn't shout in frustration.
Ela não gritou de frustração.
They haven't shouted orders. They haven't shouted orders. They haven't shouted orders.
Eles não gritaram ordens.
I didn't shout for attention. I didn't shout for attention. I didn't shout for attention.
Não gritei para chamar a atenção.
She didn't shout for help. She didn't shout for help. She didn't shout for help.
Ela não gritou por socorro.
They haven't shouted in celebration. They haven't shouted in celebration. They haven't shouted in celebration.
Eles não gritaram em comemoração.
Have you never shouted in surprise? Have you never shouted in surprise? Have you never shouted in surprise?
Você nunca gritou de surpresa?
He didn't shout during the movie. He didn't shout during the movie. He didn't shout during the movie.
Ele não gritou durante o filme.
She hasn't shouted with laughter. She hasn't shouted with laughter. She hasn't shouted with laughter.
Ela não gritou de riso.
They didn't shout in unison. They didn't shout in unison. They didn't shout in unison.
Eles não gritaram em uníssono.
Have you never shouted with happiness? Have you never shouted with happiness? Have you never shouted with happiness?
Você nunca gritou de felicidade?
Did he not shout my name? Did he not shout my name? Did he not shout my name?
Ele não gritou meu nome.
They didn't shout during the game. They didn't shout during the game. They didn't shout during the game.
Eles não gritaram durante o jogo.
I didn't shout for joy. I didn't shout for joy. I didn't shout for joy.
Não gritei de alegria.
She hasn't shouted at you. She hasn't shouted at you. She hasn't shouted at you.
Ela não gritou com você.